So this is not just a chicken coop that's built, it's engineered. This is producing compost for the garden, and the rabbits are producing compost for the garden. So basically you want to set up so you have the whole entire ecosystem cycle built into your farming.
Welcome back, everybody. If you watched our previous video, I told you about this epic journey that we're gonna take. We're gonna spend a year on the road documenting different homesteads. But before we leave Kansas City, guys, I want to show you a homestead right here in our backyard that I'm excited to introduce you to. All right, guys, I got Jake and Daisy here, and they have run an amazing homestead, like I said, on the outskirts of Kansas City. If you can hear me through the roosters and all the birds and everything going on here. We're gonna get started, and we're gonna show you some of the stuff they got out here.
No eggs in there. So this is our egg hutch, where they lay the eggs at. And then it's nice to have easy access be able to get to everything. And so everything that I'm building is with the intention that as I get older, I'm going to have to be able to maintain everything.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to build all my infrastructure now that will help with that. So putting things up at a level where you don't have to bend over to get to it.
So we got, Jake, we got rabbits and chickens all together
in one shot. That's
all together in a kind of like a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, there's some symbiosis to it. Like the feed that drops out of the rabbit cage, the chickens can eat that, and then they'll compost all the rabbit droppings because they're always scratching through it. Perfect. So you'll get bugs and stuff that are that grow in the compost, and then the chickens are eating through that, and the worms are coming up from the ground right there. And so they're mixing all of that and breaking it all down.
Yeah, perfect.
So this is a deep litter system here. So I've got about 8 inches of litter, and this is hemp straw underneath here.
Okay.
So the important part about your compost is to keep a lot of carbon in here, and that's what makes it so that your microbes will break down the droppings. Because if you notice, this doesn't have like a smell.
Yeah,
hardly at all to it.
Doesn't smell.
Yeah, and so the reason is because this has got the right amount of stuff added to it, and then the chickens will scratch this all up, and they'll compost this in. And I had 50 birds in here at one time, and with 50 birds, I did have a little bit of crust that started building up on there.
And when you say crust,
that's the chicken droppings, because when they're sitting here roosting at night, they'll have like little rows of droppings on either side of the rails, because they're standing there basically pooping. So that's the only time I had any trouble with the buildup. This coop originally it's designed for like 12 birds, but I added an extra roost rail in here, and so certain times I'll have more birds in here because I cycle through my birds. So I'll raise them up to a certain size, and then I'll cull ones that I don't want, or cull the roosters. So I'll have anywhere between, I would say, probably 18 and 50 chickens at any time in this coop. And then I've also raised turkeys in this coop as well with the chickens. Wow. So that all worked together.
And then how do you know how you have the right kind of mixture here? Like, how did you determine how much organic material to mix in here to know that your deep bedding method was going to be working?
Carolina Coops is basically where a lot of the ideas for this design came from.
Okay.
So I just followed their recommendations, and they've got some really nice stuff and very knowledgeable about. So this is not just a chicken coop that's built, it's engineered.
Okay.
And so that's the difference between like somebody that's just gonna put something that they can put their chickens in versus having an engineered system that's integral into your whole thing. So this is producing compost for the garden, and the rabbits are producing compost for the garden. So basically you want to set up so you have the whole entire ecosystem cycle built into your farming.
Yeah.
So this is set up near the garden, and then I'll show you this too. So normally what I do is I take all the compost, like when I'm cleaning out the coop, and I'll dump it in a big pile right there.
Okay.
And in the fall, I'll dump leaves and everything else in there, and the chickens will continually rotate and turn that over. I mean, I started out with a pile that was about halfway up the fence, and they've got it broken down to like next to nothing.
Wow.
And then I've taken all of that dirt, like if I need dirt to put a plant in or whatever, I'll take a couple scoops of that because it's really rich in nitrogen.
Okay.
So once the chickens are hatched out and they're a couple days old, then I'll take them and find one of the brooding hens inside the nest box, and then I'll just, at night, I'll come out while they're asleep and I'll stick the baby chickens up underneath them, and then hopefully she'll adopt them and then start raising the chickens.
Yeah, one of the most time-consuming parts of taking care of chickens is that brooding phase.
Exactly.
Where you're actually having to handle the chicks every single day, make sure they're surviving, and so if you can pass that burden off to a mama, oh man, yeah.
And that's her job, and that's what she, that's what they do.
Yeah.
And then they'll teach the little birds where the water's at. They'll teach them how to forage. They'll do all of that stuff for you.
Yeah.
So you're not having to try to, train a bird, because you're essentially, if you take over the role of the mother, then you've got a full-time job as the mother of that bird. And
that's so,
right. I have other things to do, so I'd rather not do that. So I've got all these little workers in here, if I use them as workers. So they're little rototillers that are tilling all my compost, and they're producing my eggs, and they're raising my little baby chickens for me and doing all that stuff. So you got to use what they naturally do to your advantage. And so, like, another neat system I got on here for the heat is I've got these little pegs that I can adjust. So I got airflow, and airflow is really important for chickens because they have
where do you put that?
They have sensitive, so when I'm not using it, I can stick it up in here.
Okay, so when you're closing it at night, you got this,
so
is
for
that plexiglass up
not
there?
At night, I just leave it open in the summertime. So in the winter, the frame's kind of gotten wet and changed size. But anyway, you can shut this door, and then that's good for the winter coop, which keeps a little bit more warmth in there, especially if you're raising baby chicks. But
did you get these plans from somewhere and then you built it, or?
Well, a buddy of mine ordered a coop from Carolina Coops, and then he needed me to put it together because he doesn't have as many skills and tools. So I went over to his house and put his coop together, and as I was putting it together, I was like, I really like, some aspects of this design. So some of the things like having the deep litter system and having the egg hutches on the side and having these doors set up the way they were, I utilized a lot of those ideas. But one thing I didn't like about their design is they had a double pitched roof like this, and I wanted to capture this water to be able to use for watering my chickens. So the roof line comes down. I need to put some more gutter guard on there, but then the water flows down here, and then when it gets to here, it drips off of the corner, drips down this little pipe, and it fills up this container. And then once this container's full, then it goes, and it doesn't have to be full, it just has to have water in it, but it feeds all these water nipples that are underneath there to keep the chickens watered. And then in the winter time, PVC doesn't do well with freezing, so this cap is not glued on, and so I can flush the tank out, or if it freezes, it'll just push that cap off of there.
Okay.
And I've had it freeze before, and it'll just freeze in like a big long, sickle, and push the cap right off, and then once it thaws out, then it drains the water out of there, so I don't have to worry about it freezing. And then I like to have redundant systems, especially for water. So I pulled power from my shop and put an underground line out here so I could have a plug attached. And then onto that, I've got this is a heated pan that I can set that water container on. So this water container over here is like a siphon system. And so it works by, once this water level here drops down, then it opens the valve and lets the water from this container go into that bottom ring. And then I had some problem with it freezing inside here, and so I made an insulated cover to put over the top of it.
Okay, what's that? You like shrink wrap that or heat it?
Yeah, this is, so I try to utilize whatever I can. Instead of throwing something away, I just reuse it. So this is the seat off of a folding lawn chair. Okay. That the frame broke, and so I cut that off and made that into. And then this insulation came in the package that porch swing came in. So instead of just throwing that stuff away, I just repurposed it.
We could say this chicken water is a little MacGyver-esque, I said.
Yeah. So that's the system that I have right now for the chickens. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is right here, I'm going to dig a hole in the ground big enough to stick a 55-gallon drum in the ground. And then the ground temperature will keep the barrel from freezing. And then the water will run off of here, fill the 55-gallon drum. And then I've got a solar panel with a 12-volt pump that I'm going to hook on there that's going to pump the water up to have a constant water for that. So as long as the sun's shining, I got the pump running and the chickens will have water out of that barrel.
One of the hardest things, if you live somewhere that gets cold, like here in the Midwest, it gets cold for, many weeks at a time, really cold. And so one of the hardest things for homesteaders is keeping your water from freezing and all of the other stuff that comes with that, broken equipment. And I don't know how many different waters we went through. And it's one of the things that adds stress to your systems if you don't take care of it ahead of time. So I love that idea.
It's also your biggest, one of your biggest chores is to keep your water. And so I'm trying to automate as much of that as possible. So the other thing I'm going to do is I have a guy I met that's got a mini excavator, and I'm going to go ahead and dig a trench out and put a water line out here, because right now I've been using this hose stretched out on the ground system, and it's horrible as far as it's inefficient, and then the hoses break over time.
It's almost like you need to discover where your water areas are at first before you even start the ley line, because you're talking a lot of infrastructure that goes in the ground. And if you put it at the wrong spot or whatever, you kind of just wasted a lot of time and money.
And the other thing is, like, you think you have this idea in your head how things are going to go, but you don't actually know until you start putting that into practice.
That's right.
Then you start seeing where the problems are. It's because, like, I was trying to set up things for chickens, and it's like the chickens don't know what you're doing. So they don't care if you have a great, wonderful, brilliant plan for them. They will just do whatever a chicken does. So you have to watch the chickens, observe them, and then design the system that matches with them. Like, for instance, the water system. That was a great idea, stick it in there so the chickens have water inside the coop, but then they kick all the dirt up on top of it. So I need to find a solution for that. And what that's going to end up being, I don't quite know yet.
So if you have an engineering brain and you want to get into homesteading, man, those two worlds go hand in hand, because you got to study what's actually happening, problem solve for it.
For me, that's one of the funnest parts about this, is solving those little problems. So I've got lights in here for both inside there and inside the main part of the hutch. So if you come out here at night, then you can see what's going on. That's another thing that you don't think about is light, and so you're out here with a flashlight trying to look at everything. But if you have an issue that you're dealing with at night, it's nice to have a little bit extra light, because otherwise you're holding a flashlight in your teeth or whatever. So that's another problem that you need to solve. So this is my 50-gallon automatic feeder. So it'll hold like four bags of feed. And then I use the crumbles because they feed better through the system. And I've got some pictures of it if you want to see it. But basically I have a piece of pipe.
So it's pelletized or crumbles. You're using the crumbles because they can fall through the bottom better.
So it's gravity fed. And then if you look inside here, there's a screen that slows down the flow of the stuff so it doesn't just pour out. And chickens are messy when they're eating, so they'll just sling feed all over the place. So these are 2-inch holes, and originally I drilled as many holes as I had chickens, thinking if they were all feeding at once they'd all have a hole. It doesn't really matter, because they're not going to be feeding all day long anyway. So just having a number of holes where you don't have all of the chickens fighting over one hole is the main thing. And then they slopped out a lot of the food, so I put this little pan here, which is a steel stud that I just cut down and folded the ends up and screwed it onto the side of this little platform.
That's cool.
And that works out really good for the baby chicks, because they can get up here and stand on the pan and eat out of that, and they really like it. And then the other thing I did is I raised this off of the ground, and by doing that, it gives the baby chicks a place to go to get away from the bigger birds, so that because they'll fight when it comes to feeding time. So they'll get underneath there, and then the big chickens can't peck at them and kill them.
So a 50-pound feeding system, how often do you refill this thing?
So in the wintertime, if they're locked in the coop, this is going to be about every 2 to 3 weeks. And in the summertime, this will last me about a month and a half because I'm letting the chickens free range.
Yeah, so foraging.
I get the feed lasts like 3 times as long by letting them just free range and forage.
Yep.
And then originally I put this rail up here for turkeys because turkeys like to roost up higher and they like open air. So that was my intention of having this roost up here where it's at. But what I found out is that after I get rid of the turkeys, all the chickens love this roost. So I'll have
way up high, huh?
Yep.
Yeah.
So they'll jump up on top of here and then hop up on the roost.
Okay.
So while we're in here, I'll show you what else I did with the electrical. So I pulled wire over to here and up to there, and that's for my heater system. So I've got a 5-gallon bucket heater that goes in there, and then I also put in string lights for if I want to in the wintertime, if I want to extend the length of simulated daylight, I can just plug in the Christmas lights. So on the rabbits, I've got this line, the 1/4-inch line that comes down here, and I've got a nipple on each one of their cages, and then I have heat tape that's attached to the line to keep that from freezing. So this is the little sensor on that. When it drops down below freezing, then this wire heats up, and then I put insulation on there just because it's out in the open exposed. And so
they got nipples. Oh, okay. Now yeah, I see the nipples.
This is the nipple to make sure that the water line's clear.
Got it.
So that's my little.
But each one of them have nipples on the other side.
Yeah, just to make sure it's flowing, because I get algae in the line and so I need to clean it out, because if I'm not getting free flow of water, then I know that I got a plug in the line. Okay, so this bucket basically just has a fitting attached to it, but you can see that I got algae buildup, which was another reason that I was putting the insulation on there, was to cut the sunlight down to keep the algae out of there. And then this is the heater for the bucket, so that comes on when it drops below freezing, and you can just drop that into the bucket.
See guys, systems that are already planned ahead, and so that when the stress points hit, when the cold hits or whatever it is, you can come over here, throw it in the bucket, done. You know, you're not having to come out here in the winter and then correct the things that you didn't actually plan for. So I love that. Yep, thinking ahead, planning ahead.
Got my predator wire in here to keep the predators from digging underneath. Digging underneath the chicken coop.
Yeah,
and so I've seen people that didn't do that, and I've seen raccoons actually dig holes underneath the chicken coop.
Predator pressure out here is pretty bad.
Yeah. So the two main things with your animals is going to be predators and water. You got to have those problems solved, and if you can solve those problems, feed's easy. Yeah. That's not an issue.
So next time, so when you get excited about going and getting chicks from Tractor Supply or whatever it is, and you didn't solve water and you didn't solve for predators, then you're just setting yourself up for failure, basically.
Well, and two different, one of the main decisions you have to figure out when you're doing chickens is what am I actually doing with the chickens? Am I breeding chickens? Am I producing eggs? Am I producing meat? And your system needs to be designed to accommodate that. One of the biggest problems as far as getting set up for homesteading is infrastructure. Everything is infrastructure. If you don't have that, you are gonna increase your labor tremendously. So your infrastructure has to reduce your labor so that you can get onto something else. So I don't know if anybody's ever played Farmville or something, but the bigger your farm gets, the more amount of time that you
Farmville? You played Farmville?
Nope.
Yeah. The more time that you have to spend, you know?
Right.
So you have to design systems that are going to reduce the amount of time. So the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to dig a water line out here, and I'm going to bring a line up into the bucket, and I'm going to put a toilet float valve in there.
Yeah.
So that'll automatically fill, and then it'll always have water in there, and I won't have to come out here and dump water in here.
Great.
But this is all going to get moved over here once I've fixed this rabbit system, and then I've got power to it, you know, so that's one of the reasons that this is attached to the chicken coop.
And right now the chickens are actually what? They're foraging some of that rabbit poop? What are they doing over here?
They're basically looking for the bugs and the worms and stuff that come up to get to the rabbit poop.
Okay.
So
is the concept their pellets drop through? Okay.
And just onto the ground, and then I had this same setup when I lived in the city, and if I took a shovel full of dirt out of the ground, I had enough worms in there to fill up, you know, like 24 worms in one shovel full of dirt. So this gets a tremendous amount of worms and stuff that come in here.
This is a red New Zealand, so it's actually like fawn colored like mom. I don't know if it'll be a true red. It's so sweet. They're like, when they're first born, they're pink. They look like little rats. But this is, you want to see this nice little fat little, she's feeding them. But because when she had her first litter, she had kind of a, she didn't know what to do, and it's not uncommon. Had she not taken care of these, we would have sent her to freezer camp because, but I kind of fell into the New Zealands. They are a good meat breed. These cages came from, we actually had that dog kennel. We hung these cages on the inside, so that it was like we just went inside and they actually plugged in. As you see, we have some of these that plug. That's how we kept the water, because with bunnies, you got to make sure they have clean access to water at all temperatures, and then you have to keep them out of the weather. They can't be wet, and you got to keep them out of the wind. So with our new system, it'll be better for that. Actually, if you get feed bags, they're plastic, you can save them and help insulate in the winter time. Is a cheaper thing. I've stuck cardboard. Maybe we'll chew the cardboard. She's like, they're not having this heat. See her like that? That's her staying cool. There was a time there where some of the feed got GMO intensive, and it caused sterility and problems in birthing with rabbits. And honest to God, I should be sourcing this a little bit more organically, but we're down here in the back 40, and like, I don't have, like, unless I could have something shipped in, I just gotta rely on the kindness of farmers that don't spray hay, and that this comes from MFA, which is one of the local farming stores. And so far we've done good. I will pull weeds and different things for them. And in the city, I mean, they love dandelions. I'd pull my dandelions and I'd feed them in, and then I have the fertilizer for the garden. Rabbits they're just, I don't know, so many good things. The pee, the poop, everything it's good fertilizer. And then you see this hay falls down, and you can just rake all that up and stick it around your plants.
So with rabbit manure, can you use it pretty much immediately for fertilizer?
Because it's not hot. You can like, I could take this and directly put it on my garden. But that chicken feed's hot. That chicken poop is hot. Yeah. And it'll burn your stuff. So, and this is Oreo. He's a California, New Zealand. I got him at an auction. I thought he was a she, but he got older and I found out. And you can fill these up from here, but I have to shake them down. Jake designed this as like, if we went away for a couple days, we could, get that done. And
what about the closures here? So,
the closure, oh yeah.
No, these things.
These things, honestly, this works, but I needed something, once we have predators coming around, I needed something that was going to be a little more secure and easier.
Where'd y'all get these things?
Honestly, Amazon.
Okay.
When it's hot. Ooh, oh, did you get?
Yeah.
Sorry, I should have told you that was a hot wire.
That's the second time.
Bless your heart.
Except it got me all the way through. It went into the camera.
Did it really? Are
yeah.
You okay?
I'm fine.
Oh my gosh. Well, that's because of the predators. We got to.
I have been shocked.
Sorry, dude.
By electric fences about 1 billion times. Coyotes, raccoons,
possum, armadillo. Different birds of prey, and
armadillo. Really?
Because it's a possum on a half shell. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I mean, I'm not taking chances. I've never seen them do it. But then we got snakes, and then you got cats and dogs. Believe it or not.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Our dog, unfortunately, he's got a couple of our chickens, and we do have a shot collar for a reason.
Yeah. One mistake I think a lot of people make is they want to try to do just a cheap chicken hutch or whatever. They're really just chicken coffins is what they are, because the predators will wipe you out. And it's like, if you're gonna do it, just do it one time, do it right, and have it substantial so it's gonna last. Like, I'm 50 years old now, so I want the stuff that I do to last until I'm in my 70s at least. So everything that I build is with that intention of it's gonna last a long time. And then everything needs to be like, I don't want to have to spend a lot of time with maintenance on stuff. So do it once, do it right, and you're done. And then move on to the next thing.
All right, guys, the permaculture chicken, rabbit, fertilizer, manure, all the works. So if you're interested in building one of these, I'll leave a link in the description below where you can check out Jake's video. He walks you step by step through the process to build. These things are amazing.